Welcome to Canada's Entrepreneur, where we talk to the entrepreneurs who are making it happen across Canada and deliver the news, trends, knowledge, and opinions from entrepreneurs and business influencers across the country.
Welcome to Canada's Entrepreneur. This is Angela Fay, the podcast for bold builders and moonshot thinkers. Today's guest is Rana Vig, President and CEO of Blue Lagoon Resources, and a standout example of Canadian entrepreneurship at a critical inflection point. Right now, Rana is leading Blue Lagoon through a rare and powerful transition from explorer to gold producer. With production at the Dome Mountain Gold Project targeted for summer 2025, this is no small feat in an industry where most never make it past the exploration phase. So today, we'll uncover the mindset, strategy, and leadership behind Rana's 30-plus year career spanning tech, mining, and global business, and why this moment matters for Canada's future economies. Stick around for the second half of our interview exclusively for members, and we're going to go deeper dive into business opportunities, investor insights, and how you can get involved in shaping the next chapter of Canadian entrepreneurship. Let's get started. Hello, Rana. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And let's just kick it off right away. Let's set the stakes. You have led tech and mining, two of the world's two of the industries that are wildly different. So what's the real thread that's guided your approach to building businesses?
Wow, what's the real thread? A lot of patience, I think, is really the common denominator. You know, business is not easy, but it doesn't matter what business you're in. It takes a tremendous amount of effort. Nothing ever goes as planned. Everything is always more challenging. You know, it looks all great on paper. I don't think I've ever seen a bad performer. Have you? It all looks fantastic on paper and on a spreadsheet. But as you get into it, there's always a tremendous amount of challenges. And you just have to have this mindset that I don't know if it can be taught. Maybe it's just something that you're born with. And I knew very early on, I wasn't born to be a 9-to-5er. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think it just takes a lot of patience, and you have to be driven, and you got to have a thick skin. You can't get discouraged. You get discouraged, but you got to be able to get up and walk the walk again, and just keep pressing forward.
I'm hearing an awful lot of resilience, long game thinking, adaptability, and of course, purpose-driven leadership there. Right? Yeah. No, the gold project we're working on right now. I'm pretty excited about this. Dome Mountain. You've reached a point only 8 other projects in BC have in the last decade. What did it take to get that permit? And how do you approach environmental responsibility in a space that is often criticized for its impact?
Yeah, look, again, tremendous amount of patience, because it is very difficult to get a permit, a full mining permit, to be able to actually extract the material out of the ground. Is very, very difficult. And for rightly so, in that the government wants to protect the environment. But unfortunately, I think that from a permitting and time standpoint, it's a little bit impractical, because the way it's structured right now, for example, in mining, there used to be a couple of different offices, something for smaller operations and something for larger operations. 3 years ago, they eliminated that. So now there's just one office that handles everything. So whether it's us, a little startup, or it's, Barrick, a giant, they treat you the same. And that becomes a problem, because it's not practical, right? Also, just staffing. There's just young people don't seem to want to stick to a job anymore. So there's so much turnover all the time. So that's a real challenge for industry as well as a government. And then you touched on environmental. There's a lot of hoops that you've got to go through to make sure that you're in compliance. But even then you have the indigenous rights that you have to deal with. Now, we were able to navigate all of that, obviously, very successfully. And the way we did that is really to be transparent. I think one of the challenges that a lot of leadership has, unfortunately, a lot of companies, they're always, there's too much focus on the bottom line. Look, as a business, we've got to make a profit. There's no doubt about that, right? My responsibility is to shareholders, and you've got to, increase the value. And one of the ways you do that is by having a more efficient operation. But also, I would argue, if you don't have good stewardship principles, and if you don't have good relationships with the people that you're working with, for example, in this case, the indigenous groups, then you're also doing a disservice to your shareholders, because the long-term longevity of the project isn't going to be there, right? There's going to be all sorts of challenges that go along with it. So our approach has been very, very transparent, working with the indigenous people, and making sure that we care. I'll give you one simple example. One of the things is water. Very, very important in the mining industry. Very important, obviously, to us all, and including the indigenous. So in our case, it's the Lake Babine Nation. Fish isn't just a food for them; it's a way of life. So one of the things that we did, for example, in one stream, we were mandated to do 5 different tests. But when we sat down with our team, we felt we should do more, because we looked at it from our perspective. So guess what? We ended up doing 9 test sites on that. Sure, it cost us a couple $1,000s or more, but so what? Long term, that is paying off dividends. It developed a further trust with the Lake Babine Nation, because they looked at us and said, "Oh wow, you guys did this on your own. You must care." So that's just one simple example of how I think that you have to approach it from a leadership standpoint.
Well, in the nation that you're talking about, and the actual project is about 50 minutes from Smithers, BC, a place where, economic opportunity and quality of life are deeply intertwined there. It's a little remote, but what do you see as the role of mining or any resource-based business in actually strengthening Smithers itself, or any community that's wanting to build resilience?
Well, look, contribute back to the community that you are working in. I mean, that's been a long-standing principle of mine in any business that I've been involved with. Make sure you give back to where you are working, whether it's the town or the Lake Babine Nation. Offer opportunities. I think that's just the right thing to do. So we try to do that in every way possible. One of my jobs, I believe, is to create those opportunities for those people that live in that town. So we've done a number of things. One is that we make sure everything any dollar that we spend, we try to make sure that we spend it within that region, so that they can benefit from it, but also to create longer term opportunities. Like with the Lake Babine Nation, we're setting up 5 scholarships so that the young people have an opportunity. We're also, there's a tremendous opportunity here. I've spoken to my team saying, look, how many mines are there? I mean, there's not that many. So why don't we give an opportunity to the people who would like to be in the mining industry to get some training? Right. This is not something that's sponsored by the government. This is our own initiative. And my team is very excited about that, saying we're happy to bring on people who are interested in learning about mining and taking them, whether it's going underground or being or on the geological side, or it's on the biological side, testing water, what have you. There's many different ways that we can contribute, other than just making a small donation to a basketball team or something.
Well, and it sounds to me like you're actually in the throes of building a local economy around the future of mining, not just what's happening today, right? With training and opportunities. That's amazing.
Absolutely. Look, I think it's very important in any industry, but particularly in our industry, because there are many people who don't understand mining. Everybody, many people think, well, no, we shouldn't be mining. Well, why? Right. So if you create the education, if you explain, what you're doing, and you show that everything is being done responsibly, and we're working hand in hand in partnership, then everybody's benefiting.
Well, then we talked a little bit, right, about if it's not grown, it's mined. And if you have a laptop or you have a smartphone, you're carrying gold and silver in your pocket. So just be aware that, we all benefit from mining operations. One thing that, could you talk a little bit about the status of Canada on the global stage in regards to responsible mining?
Well, I think we're one of the leaders. Absolutely, we're one of the leaders. We have a beautiful country. We have. I think we're one of the largest water sources in the world. That's one of the reasons why I think it is so strict here is we want to maintain that.
Mhm.
I would question the level of strictness. I think that sometimes government goes overboard, right? It's to extremes, and I think that there's a level of practicality. I think that has to be injected in there. Look at what's happening in the discussions around pipelines. Suddenly, because Trump is making all these threats and he wants to make us the 51st state, and we're doing all this now. Pipelines that were out of favor a while ago with government suddenly are becoming in favor. So we shouldn't have to be forced to think on those things. We
Right.
should These should be discussions ongoing. Leading countries, thought leaders. That's what responsible growth, I think, is, right? Is that we should be having those discussions to say, look, how do we impact each other? How do these things impact everyone else? And how do we make sure that we do these things responsibly so that we can grow? Because the bottom line is it's a necessity, right?
Yeah.
We have to do some of these things. So I think Canada is leading the way. I just think we can do more.
Well, we talked a little bit about inefficiency, so I want to ask one quick question. We're propagating a concept called future zones, where there's less red tape, there's some experimentation, there's innovation allowed to be happen. What kind of future zone could you imagine that would work for mining and help eliminate some of that red tape or inefficiencies?
I think more consultation with the industry, and maybe dedicating departments or departments specifically to that. Because one of the things that I've been very frustrated about with the mining ministry and some of the people that I've worked with, and this is not in any way to disparage them. I'm not speaking down to them. I'm just saying my observation is that majority of them don't come from industry. So they don't understand. In fact, there was one person actually that I met on the electrical side that he came from industry, and it was interesting. The discussion with this individual and the discussion with all the other people who basically were academics, who kind of came straight from school and had are pretty much lifers in government. The discussions was very different because this person understood my pain points because he came from industry. So he worked with us to get to the common ground, to get to where they were comfortable, what they needed to do to make sure that we were in compliance, and allow us the ability to get to that point with some ease. So I think that if government truly wants to make some changes, I think they've got to bring in industry partners, and they've got to listen. Look, I'm an entrepreneur. This is a simple example that I can give. Right, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in many different industries. What do I know about anything really? What do I know about mining? I'm not a geologist. I'm not an engineer. But you know what I do? I make sure I'm the dumbest guy in the room in this industry. I make sure that I surround all the top technical people right around me, and I listen to what they have to say. Now, I have to have the skills to decipher, right, what they're saying, and which direction do we go? But from the technical perspective, I'm listening to them, and then I counter that by bringing other advisors, and so that listening to them talk to each other, and then figuring out, where's because every technical person obviously has different abilities, right? The scale of just human nature. We're all different intelligence levels. So so I take that information then, and then I figure out how I'm going to move forward. Government, I think, needs to take some similar approach. Not just put out on another commission or something, and then the report sits there for 20 years and no one looks at it. That's just politics, right? Actually bring in industry people and sit back and listen. Right. That's what I think leadership is, because they have the ability to really make some significant changes in all facets of our life, in all areas, not just mining.
I'm imagining now, just bringing some of the things we talked about together, is government employees having a required 3 or 6 months internship in your training facility on site. I love that idea. I want to shift a little bit to human health and longevity, because most people don't associate mining with human health, but economic stability and purpose and community impact how long and how well we live. So, what is your take on how entrepreneurs, as they're working in community, can contribute to a culture of long life and meaningful work?
Well, I think that fundamentally goes to creating a happy a fulfilling environment at your job site, at the place of work. If you're, and that's not just economics, that's just not how much you pay. I think there's been many studies that have shown that it's the money is not necessarily the single motivator for an individual. It could be, extended benefits. There's so many different things that motivate people. It could just be leadership training. So I think it's very, very important for companies, and we certainly try to do that in within our company to figure out, with what is the driving factor of each individual, and what is it that's going to fulfill them? Because I think that if they're not feeling fulfilled, ultimately, again, I'm doing a disservice to my shareholders. The company's not going to grow. It's going to get either stagnant or it's going to decrease. So I think it's very, very important to have that top of mind constantly, is that how do we make an investment in our human capital to make sure that they're growing and that they're happy. And that can be in many different ways, right? It could be training, right? It could be but you've really got to listen. I think industry and leadership, I think, don't listen enough to understand, right? Maybe it's just human nature. We want to tell you, hey, this is what we think. I want to tell you this is what I need to understand, what is your requirements, right? What are you wanting out of so that I can give back.
This is a bit of a perfect segue. If we've talked about healthy places and health, we're exploring a new idea at Canada's Entrepreneur called a future fund, where collective spending doesn't replace, but it augments traditional taxes and allows citizens and communities to co-decide on a priority for critical infrastructure or programming. You've raised capital. You've allocated capital, both in private, public markets. I'd love to tap your wisdom here on an idea. What lesson can you offer from your experience when designing a wealth system that works for the next generation?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah.
question.
So what I mean by that is we've got all these traditional tax systems, right? We've got traditional, we go to market and publicly raise. And if we are now raising funds for a local community and allowing the citizens to prioritize for themselves what is the next piece of critical infrastructure that they need to elevate their community, what ideas do you have on how we can set up that system?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to, again, asking them what is it they need. I mean, just very recently, I had lunch with the chief of the Lake Babine Nation, and this is exactly the discussion that I had. I had certain ideas. I said, I'd like to go into one of the smaller communities that you have up there, and I'd like to work with the young folks, and I had all these ideas in my head that we could take them into sport, and we can do these things, and we could inject a little bit of capital ourselves, and then I would go to all of my suppliers, and I would say, hey guys, if you would donate a little bit to this cause, the company will match it, and I'll maybe do some matching personally, and we'll grow this. You know what he came back and said to me? He said, Rana, he says, the most important thing to us is the fish. I was taken aback a little bit.
Wow.
Okay. What do you mean by that? He says, the streams, the fish, it's our lifestyle. It's our way of our life. I really started thinking about that. I said, okay, so what can we do there? And in the discussion, we decided to continue. So my point is, now we're starting to think about, all right, what is that? What is that going to look like? So, and is it a hatchery? And do we create some sort of an environment, a economic environment around that where we can raise money? I have no idea how much it would cost, but it was just interesting listening.
Yeah.
I came all enthusiastic. I was so excited about taking my youth programs that I've done many times or worked, and to them. But then they came back with something, completely different. And that goes back to a little bit to their philosophy. It's called Yinta, and Yinta means effectively be one with the land, respect the land. See, again, listening, right, is what is their needs. And Yinta, by the way, it's so important for us to understand that to be good stewards. One of the ways, we were trying to figure out, how do I get our staff? How do we constantly think about the Yinta, about the land on this mine site every day? So you know what we did? We decided to hire a local artist, and we had these giant murals created that she created for us, reflecting their something from their culture, and we had them framed. And right at the mine site, we have this giant mural right at the entrance. So as you walk in, that's the first thing you see. And then we had a number of other ones made, and we've got them on every single building at the mine site. So
Wow.
as we're walking around, subconsciously, right, every time we look up, we see this image, and we're thinking of the Yinta, we're thinking of the land, we're thinking about being good stewards, right? Because out of sight is out of mind, as we know, right? So just little things like that, I think, create this environment that I think that will foster success.
That is excellent. I'm just, for those who are just leaving us after this, your gold production is targeted for summer. Again, a bold, rare milestone. What's keeping you focused right now, and what should Canadians be paying attention to in the next 12 months?
Well, what's keeping me focused is the gold price. The gold price is just exploding, right? It's just so exciting right now. What's happening in that realm? So we're very, very excited. And yeah, we're July 9th is our scheduled grand opening. So we're going to take one day to celebrate a little bit and share our story with the stakeholders who will come up there and help us cut the ribbon and have some excitement. And then we're going to start production.
Nice.
Shortly after that. So what people should be looking at our company is, if they are excited about the gold space and want to have some exposure in it, then we're one of these upcoming companies. We're already one of the best performing stocks of 2025, and we're just getting started.
Well, and if you're loving this conversation and you want to go a little deeper, head over to canadasentrepreneur.com. You're going to level up your engagement as a member. We're going to just have a few more minutes with Rana in the second part of this interview. And for investors, collaborators, what this means for Canada's resource strategy in a time of global transition. So it's kind of behind the scenes insight you won't hear anywhere else. Available now for members. Thanks, Rana, for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me.